it would force us to make decisions, sort of reinventing the wheel. But when we would reinvent it, we would reinvent it better than it was before. Because when you're having these lives on these other planets, in meditation, you can check back on any of your lives. So if you're having a problem, you say, okay, how can I solve this? Oh, I see 10 lives back, I had the same problem, and I solved it this way. And so you solve it the very same way over and over and over again, where we can't do that. We have to solve the problem like we've never seen it before.
Sort of everything outside the box.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember in your book that you talked about well, let's just jump to what I was trying to hold off as a clincher, but I think I'm going to put it in the middle, and then we'll base everything else on this. Tom, tell everybody what's going to happen in roughly, I think the last I read was midsummer or late summer of 2015. What's going to happen then?
Okay. In 2015, the Pleiadians are going to make first public contact. And guess where they're going to make it? In Russia. Because obviously there's it sounds to me like they're sort of rewarding them for being the first guys to own up that all these governments have actually had meetings with aliens in the past. And so the Pleiadians are going to show up. I've been told it's probably going to be on a military base in Russia so that they can control it. As I was told, they don't want huge crowds running up trying to see the flying saucer crap that comes down. Mm-hmm. And so it'll be controlled. They'll have like one news crew representing all the other news crews. Same for the newspapers, magazines, radios, etc. And so this will be the very first public contact that we will all be able to witness, mm-hmm. and it'll be a very exciting time.
Yeah, I would say, to put it very mildly, it'll be extremely exciting. You said that the ETs, the folks from the Pleiades, will be on that ship. Now, I remember that you've also said that we are an amalgam here on this planet of several strains from other planets, and Pleiades was one, Sirius A and B, Arcturus, and then you have the Zetas that come in. Why is it that the Pleiades will be the first ones that show up?
Well, because they look exactly like us.
Okay.
Obviously, they contributed a lot of DNA to our DNA signatures, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. And Sirius contributed heavily, Arcturus. Basically, those three societies were the big contributors. And then after that, there are 200 planets in the Federation of Planets in this quadrant of the galaxy. There's at least 5 or 6 other federations in our galaxy, but this one, all the planets seem to be like fairly close to each other, an easy portal hop, as we'll get into. Mm-hmm. And so they banded together and formed this federation after the original Star Wars, which happened a couple or several million years ago. Mm-hmm. And that's so all these planets contributed souls for the experiment.
Mm-hmm. But with the DNA structure, if you say that they look more like us,
yes,
that it's not only just the soul originating from that other planet, it's also something to do with the actual creation of the human species biochemically, right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we will meet our uncles and aunts and ET fathers and mothers, so to speak. And even now, you can see that we're headed in that direction to be able to do that someday. We're already cloning sheep and, mm-hmm. before too long, it's going to be all sorts of other animals probably, and eventually we will be able to create people ourselves. But it's going to be hundreds of years. In the meantime, we'll be able to regrow limbs that have been amputated, let's say, and all sorts of other things like that.
Right. I want to ask you a question related to what does this have to do with the planet Nibiru and the Anunnaki, and also one about the Zetas. But before I do that, I want to remind everybody that you're listening to Tom T. Moore here on EPIC Voyages Radio at inceptionradionetwork.com. And we're talking about Tom's brand new book, hot off the press. You can get it right now as an ebook at Amazon.com, or you can pre-order it as a hard copy at Amazon.com. And I believe the delivery will be the 26th of June, but certainly before the end of the month. But we're talking about his book, First Contact. Now, to ask you about Nibiru and the Anunnaki and the Zetas, tell everybody what the Earth Directive is. Where did it come from? Why was it instituted? What happened that made the Earth Directive become a reality?
Okay. The Earth Directive, I was told, came about when the planets, first of all, a lot of these ET societies, there were different ET societies, like there might be one that was involved with the Atlanteans, and another ET society that might have been involved with the Lemurians, and another ET society with the Asians. So they were all heavily involved with supposedly helping and working with these societies. But lo and behold, here were the Atlanteans, and they were able to see that the Atlanteans were headed on a road where they were going to destroy themselves. And so I guess our ET brothers and sisters got together and they said, look, this is not working. We're interfering with them, and now they're going to destroy themselves. So they had this Earth Directive for everyone to leave us alone. And that was okay, and that was going along just fine. That happened obviously over 12,500 years ago. And then lo and behold, because we're in the space-time continuum where we're the only place in the universe that you can travel frontwards and backwards in time. We're in this time loop, if you will. So lo and behold, the Zetas arrived one day in the 20th century, and I was told that they could have arrived in the 17th or 18th or 19th centuries, but they were from the Zeta past, and so their instruments got them to the 20th century. And so they arrived. Their society was dying because the way they reproduced themselves was cloning, and the clones were not being ensouled. And so they came to Earth to get our DNA, which they knew came from all over the universe, and they knew it would be this great DNA to create a hybrid race so that their race would survive. And it was like a bull in a china closet, because they abducted over 25,000 people, and they would take them, and as an example, if it was a woman and they wanted her impregnated, then she might be taken and kept on the spaceship for over 9 months, unless they had a way to be able to remove the fetus after, say, 3 or 4 months. But they were still on the mothership, having to run around, and then they had their memories wiped because it was so fearful. And so here come the Zetas. Well, what they did, they decided that we need to have an amendment to the Earth Directive, and it says you can't abduct people. You have to understand, no one had ever abducted people before, so it wasn't in the Earth Directive. They had to have an amendment. It took them two and a half universal years, and one universal year each equals 10 Earth years. And so basically, by the time they got all 200 societies to sign off on this, it had been 2.5 years, but it had been 25 years for us. And by then, they told the Zetas no more abductions, and there have not been any abductions since that time. There have been other societies, whether it be the Pleiadians, the Sirians, or whatever, that will come in and check on their souls, but nobody's being abducted now.
In other words, they're not intrusive at all.
Right.
In terms of meddling. Now, I know this is kind of off the subject, but we're talking about humans. But is this related anything to the cattle mutilations and things like that, or is that a whole different thing that's unrelated to the Zetas?
I haven't gotten into that.
Okay.
So it could be related for some reason, maybe DNA studies. I don't know, but I have not asked questions on that. Mm-hmm. I was asking a lot of other questions, and nobody ever asked me to ask about cattle mutilation. So maybe that'll be in book 2. Who knows?
I remember reading so much about, well, maybe they're stealing DNA and they're doing experiments with the cattle and all that. But a lot of what you read and what you've heard is just pure speculation because there's no way to tell. Will we be seeing these Zetas, some of these Zetas, after they show up in 2015, or are they...
Well, they're not going to show up in 2015. The Pleiadians come first.
Right.
The Pleiadians look exactly like us. That's going to be a huge revelation, the fact that there are other beings in the universe that look exactly like Earth humans. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that's going to be a big, big deal, and suddenly the major religions are going to have to confront that, because obviously there are some that only believe that humans have been around since 6,000 or 7,000 years. So that will be very big. The Pleiadians will start spoon-feeding us information. On the first trip, they will visit perhaps 15 countries or so, and at each stop, they will present some little gift that will be almost archaic from their standpoint. It'll be something that will be something that we haven't invented yet, so that everyone will feel special. Mm-hmm. And so they will give these little gifts, and they will, tell some stories, but they won't overload us. They'll spoon feed this information. Then they'll come back another 1 or 2 times. Then the Zetas show up in somewhere around 2016, somewhere maybe in that year, and they will come to profusely apologize for all these abductions. And so that's going to be really interesting. Are the people that were abducted, will they want to meet with the Zetas to find out their stories, or will they want to stay as far away from them as possible, because it will bring up really terrible memories out of their subconscious that have been wiped? Okay? Mm-hmm. After that, the Pleiadians will come back another time just before the Sirians arrive on their mothership with 850 beings, crew members, and they'll say, well, the Sirians are coming. Now you have to understand, these beings really